Hello everyone, my name is Michelle Hobbs and I am an Ontario certified teacher who is currently taking reading part 3. I actually teach in Qatar at the moment and I teach using an American curriculum, but I'm here today to talk about TLCPs. Now the first question you're probably asking yourself, if you are still in Teachers College or if you've never heard about this term before, is what is a TLCP? So really briefly, TLCP stands for Teaching Learning Critical Pathway. It is a model used to design and organize teaching so student learning is personalized. It promotes achievement for all students in meeting a common set of expectations. It involves the sharing and collaboration of teachers and educators to try and come to the best outcomes. It also involves teachers sharing different strategies and moderating student marking. This is a strategy that considers the needs of individual schools and grade levels, and this makes it applicable to all subjects, including the area of reading. Next question, why a TLCP? Okay, so first off, I've already talked a lot about the answer to this question. But TLCPs increase and improve teacher strategies through collaboration. If you're having some kind of difficulty or some kind of problem, or you don't understand why a student is quote unquote not getting it, the TLCP enables you to go and talk with other teachers who are in the same division, the same grade level, or the same school, and talk to them about the concerns that you are experiencing in order to try and improve. These are also meant to improve the outcomes for all students. They are designed with the intention of enabling all students to learn and to achieve success. Now for stage 1 of your TLCP, the first thing that you need to do is gather evidence. The evidence is meant to determine what area you are going to focus on. Because here's the thing, the TLCP is only 6 weeks long. So as a result, you can't just generally and broadly say students need to focus on reading comprehension, because reading comprehension is a very broad umbrella of different skills. So one of the things that I do when I am gathering information is I go onto RazKids. Now not everybody has access to RazKids, but if you do, RazKids is an online reading program where students read and listen to stories and then answer questions about stories. One thing a lot of people do not know is that the questions are actually categorized into different kinds of reading comprehension types. So you have inferencing questions, you have summarizing questions, retelling questions, character questions, fact and opinion questions, and so on. And so you can actually go onto individual student profiles and you can see what questions are they generally getting right and what questions do they still need some work on. You can also look at your teacher account in terms of general classroom trends. So that would be a first go-to area of mine. Another thing that you could do is you can look at standardized tests if that applies to your particular students. I say if because I teach grade 2. The first time students at my school take a standardized test is in grade 3. But if you are teaching grade 3 and above, after grade 3 and above at my school, they're taking a standardized test called ACER. Of course, if you are in Canada, you can look, or in Ontario, I should say, you can look at their results from the ETFO, or at least I assume that you can. Again, I have never taught in the province of Ontario. You can also design a particular assessment towards the end of figuring out if students do need help in a particular comprehension area. Or you can design a test with a variety of reading comprehension questions and then determine which ones did they get right, which ones did they get wrong, and what should be our next step. But you should make sure that before you decide what, broadly speaking, the focus is that you are looking at the assessment data to determine where students are having difficulties. All right, so you have looked at your assessment data and you have decided now what you're going to focus on. So I'm going to take the example of inferencing, because in my reading course, I designed a TLCP based on inferencing, which is a skill that my students at my current school generally really lack in. So next thing you want to do is go to your curriculum document and decide what expectations you are going to take from language and from reading in order to try and support your students, so you know as a TLCP group what it is that you are working towards. Next, look at your resources and talk to the teaching team, because you need to now figure out what are you doing currently as a teacher and as a staff, and what can you do to improve. One of the things that I suggested doing before starting the TLCP, before even maybe the first meeting after all of these assessment materials have been gathered and after you've decided on an area of focus, is have teachers read about best practices for the particular strategy that you are teaching. And there's a variety of different websites you can look at for ideas, for strategies, and for resources. One of the ones that I suggested for inferencing was Reading Rockets, which actually cites about 3 or 4 different articles. So you can see that these are actually strategies that have been researched and that are supported by research. Because one of the reasons why we're doing this is to become better teachers and, more importantly, to help our students learn. We need to make sure that we are doing our best toward that particular end. Okay, so now you all know what you are doing, but the issue is, how are we going to assess them? What is going to be the culminating task? So that's the next thing that you need to think about. You need to design your culminating task, and you need to make sure that it is age and grade appropriate, and also appropriate to the level of your students. I teach at a school that has all English language learning students and some students who do have special needs. So as a result, I'm going to make sure that whatever my assessment is for inferencing in grade 2, that it has a lot of support mechanisms involved. So that means that I need to have different kinds of groupings. I need to make sure that they have lots of chances to practice, lots of chances to see it modeled in different ways, but also, more importantly, that they get to use a graphic organizer, because without that, a lot of the children, I think, would not be able to achieve the goal. So those are some different considerations in mind. So my final culminating task actually involved them filling in a graphic organizer that they would have lots and lots of time practicing. And I'll talk more about what the planning stage looks like later on. But after you figure that out, you've got to, of course, think of a rubric. What are the skills? What do you want them to achieve? And what are you working towards? Starting with that end in mind is going to be very important, so you know what it is that you have to teach your children so that they can be successful. Data walls are also very necessary tools, as they are a very visual way of showing us where the students are at the start. It's a way of mapping out what we hope will be success and what we are working towards, which is, of course, success. So after you've figured out as a group what the area of greatest need is, what your final assessment is going to look like, what success is going to look like, so what your success criteria are, and you do that in a collaborative manner, it's time to proceed to the next step. Stage 2, which is deciding on your actions and checking in. So, in other words, we are staying accountable to ourselves and accountable to our actions. So we need to decide how and what we will teach. We need to plan out this 6-week block. We need to make it very clear to all of the teachers what we are doing, and we need to do this in a collaborative way. What is the difference that will make a difference? Think about teaching strategies. Think about how we can improve. Think about where we need to go. Think about what you are noticing in your students' pre-assessment results. So the first thing that you need to do is build a collective understanding of how and what you are going to teach. You need to think about a big idea for students to be learning about. So this is a way of connecting all of the different texts that you decide on. Now, the big idea that I decided on for my school, based on needs and also based on general themes in children's literature, is treating others respectfully. In other words, the golden rule. Treat others the way that you wish to be treated. Next, I had to select. I say I because I planned this one by myself, but you would of course be doing a TLCP with a group. So the group would decide on big idea texts, a variety of rich literary texts. So for treat others the way that you wish to be treated, there are a lot of great books. I chose Recess Queen, I chose Chrysanthemum, and I chose a variety of other books. And of course, other teachers would also be looking for these books. And one of the things I suggested for the TLCP is to keep all of these books in one room and borrow them every day, 2 days, 3 days to a week as necessary. That would ensure if there were many books and one teacher had 1 or 2 or 3 at a time, that there were always books that every teacher had access to for teaching purposes. Because of course, when you are teaching reading, materials are probably the most important thing. You cannot teach reading or a reading skill if you do not have the books to support that. So next, you have to select high-yield teaching strategies that will promote the greatest student growth and align best practice with the identified areas of need. Now, I'm taking these words off of a website, but it's true because you need to find the best way to teach your students. You need to think about the different strategies because you are trying to teach them a deeper level thinking skill. What are the strategies that you are going to use to try to promote that comprehension and that growth with your students generally and with your specific targeted students that you will need to choose at this particular time? In other words, students who you think will struggle and students who you will be following the progress of throughout this entire TLCP. Another thing to remember is that students need to be communicated with as well. You can't expect them just to magically learn a brand new skill. So you need to make sure that they not only have the tools like graphic organizers, but also some strategies on hand. So you might actually want to create some sort of graphic organizer to be posted on the wall in an area of the classroom that they are reading in or read in frequently, or you can give them a little comprehension strategies card for the particular area that you are focusing on. So after you decide on your marker student, just keep in mind that at every meeting from then on out, you need to be communicating their progresses and their successes at the meeting. This is a way of trying to determine if the strategies that you are employing are actually working and trying to figure out if they're not working, what you can do better as a teacher. It also allows other teachers to suggest some strategies to you. At the meetings, teachers should bring some different pieces with them. They need to bring an example of a good piece and a piece that a teacher considers puzzling. so that teachers can try to puzzle out what the students are doing and what they mean together. And who knows, there might be another teacher who has a student who is doing the exact same thing. Or there might be a teacher who has encountered this kind of thing before, who can give you some insight as to what the student is doing and how to help that particular student. Again, at its core, this is all about the students. So you're going to take that work, you're going to look at it, deconstruct it, again, just this sample work, and then using the criteria and the rubric that you have already come up with some next steps. In every single meeting, teachers reflect on the TLCP actions and next steps, making sure that they are keeping their teaching practice up to date with what they are focusing on for the students' sake. Teachers are always taking ownership for what they are doing in the classroom at a particular point in time, meaning that we are all held responsible to be the best practitioners that we can be. We're always on the lookout for meaningful teaching and learning engagement for students. So next up in the TLCP is stage 3. So what needs to happen here is each teacher needs to bring student work to share. And one piece per teacher is moderated by the TLCP. And then there are smaller teams that are formed. Each team is going to look at 3 or 4 pieces of student work and is going to especially look at the puzzling pieces. They're going to consider, is there a difference in the student achievement? And what was the difference that did make a difference in that student achievement? So, all of this individual data then needs to be collected and placed onto a classroom data wall. That way, this becomes something very visual. This is so that teachers and maybe also students can see progress across this time. Teachers are then reflecting using a variety of different questions, including, what did we learn? What do we want to do next? What were the most effective and high-yield strategies chosen? What does or doesn't our student evidence tell us about student learning? How do we know that a high level of learning was achieved? What do we do for our students who are not meeting with success? So in this way, teachers are again continuing to try and become better practitioners. Next, teachers communicate their findings and information that they gained from their TLCP. So in other words, continuing to communicate what worked and what didn't work and what we can consider to do in the future. So I hope that today you learned a little bit about how TLCPs can help with teaching different reading comprehension strategies. That's all for today, and thank you so much for listening. I'm Michelle Hobbs, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.